Hello, 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 welcome back. Yes, it's all about monsters today and animated armor. Animated something. That's the topic. We're going to try to deal with the stat block for animated armor. I've got a bit of a surprise. I'm not just going to do animated armor. I'm also going to do animated statues. Two, in fact. So I've done a lot of pre-work on all of this. So it should be really interesting. I think you're going to wind up with some tools that you can really use in your game that will be really helpful because it'll cover a range, different ranges in the game. Okay? Because there's a reason why I want to do animated armor. It is a hot mess. I have a poll. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. But I would grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, and I want to hear your thoughts as I go. Because I've had plenty of time to think about animated armor and animated statues. And it's time to get going, shall we? Let's make this happen. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. Not just any tabletop role-playing game, but Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but also Dungeons & Dragons 2024 or 2025. We're going to address the monster manual and the animated armor for the monster manual in 2014, but I also want to address the new stat block. And God, that art for the animated armor and the new a new book is terrible. But I'm going to want to address the stat block for animated armor in 2025, the new monster manual. So there are in fact two different stat blocks. Look, there we go. Okay, these are different versions of the monster, and one is 2014 and one is 2025. And you'll notice a couple of things. There's some things missing. The animated armor is pretty simple now. In fact, it's pretty much just a bag of hit points, and that's it, not much else. So I think it definitely needs a bit of work, and I've known it needed work before that. Like 2014. Animated armor needed work. Like it was not a good monster. It really wasn't. It didn't work the way it needed to. So I'm going to address that. I'm going to do that today. I have done some work already, and as I mentioned before, I'm going to do 3 stat blocks. I'm going to fix the animated armor. I'm going to make you an animated wooden statue and an animated stone statue. Okay, so that you can use them at different ranges of the game with different power levels for characters. So my first question to you is, what changes to the animated armor stat block do you think need to be made? Now, everybody has their own opinion. And just because I'm building it a particular way doesn't not mean it needs to be built that way, okay? But this is the things that I would do, and it's fundamental stuff. So I have a document that I have prepared, and I want to bring this over so you can see it, and we'll get started because it's a very, very hot day. That's why you can probably hear cicadas outside singing and builders building houses, and every door and window is open right now in my house. So this is what we're working with. So I'm going to come back to chat, but I want to work through the maths. There's a fundamental problem with the stat block for an animated armor. And you'll notice that I've got some stuff in yellow, which means I'm probably going to change those things. Okay? You'll notice there's quite a lot of yellow in this one. So let's first have a look at animated armor as it stands in 2014. So animated armor in 2014 was a challenge rating 1 monster. Now the reason and rationale for doing this was because they wanted the monster to be available at low levels of play, and so that you could use it repeatedly. The problem with this is as soon as you've used animated armor in your game, every suit of animated armor that is sitting in a hallway, in a room, or anywhere that the players see is assumed to be animated armor, and they destroy it, right? And then they try to wear it, only possibly to be told by the DM that, no, you can't wear this because you destroyed it. Like the armor is no more. So animated armor is really only a surprise once. And after that, clever players even average players will figure it out, and every single suit of armor is getting destroyed. So you can't keep playing that same game or that same monster and think it's going to work. So fundamentally, there's a problem there. So what that begs the question is, what we need to do is build up enough time. Pardon me. We have to build up enough time with our players coming across suits of armor that don't animate and attack them for them to be lulled into a sense of false security, so that later on in the game, with a much more powerful suit of animated armor, we can hit them. That would be the sensible way to approach this if you think about this logically. The other thing is, it's wearing plate armor. It's plate mail. Like, it's got an armor class. If you have a look at the player's handbook for 5e, the armor class for that sort of armor is an 18. It's just an 18. That's it. It's not really natural armor. It's just the fact that it's made out of plate armor. Like, that's the number it should be. Now, an 18 for a challenge rating 1 monster is stupidly high. It's far too far out of the range of a challenge 1 monster. It should be way down, like in the 13 range. That should be way down there if you're going to do that. So that's one problem. Like, it really should be faced later, so you build up a sense of false security in the players. And 2, the armor class is not very good. The hit points aren't high enough, even for a challenge 1 monster. Believe it or not, 33 is not enough for challenge 1. Okay, not going to be enough. And there's a couple of fundamental problems too. False appearance caused so many arguments by players when I was playing the game. Anti-magic susceptibility would come in occasionally, but very rare. It was only ever going to come in if somebody cast Dispel Magic. Now, if they're level 1, they don't have Dispel Magic. They're going to be level 5 probably by the time they have access to Dispel Magic. So they're never going to use it. So it wound up being information that was completely pointless. Like, you might as well not even bother having anti-magic susceptibility, which is probably why it got eliminated, because it never came up. If you're going to use it at level 1, level 2, not going to happen. Not going to happen at level 3. You're going to have to wait till a character level is 5 before they have Dispel Magic, and they're definitely not going to have anti-magic fields going. Like, it's just not going to happen. So you've got a whole series of features now that lean towards it should be faced at a higher level when they have those tools and a choice to use them. Or are we just going to make sure they have these things here so they can't use them? It's really strange. So here's another problem. Here's another issue that I see. Anti-magic susceptibility has got some funky mechanics. It's really confusing. It's a pain in the ass. Dispel Magic has specific mechanics for it. Follow those and you'd be fine. Pardon me, people. I'm drowning on my own mucus. And then Anti-Magic Field, it just works. Like, it just works. So you don't have to worry about it. You just say Anti-Magic Field and you're all good. So there's another thing in terms of the trait that we needed to address. And then false appearance. False appearance used to cause all sorts of problems. So while the armor is motionless, it is indistinguishable from a normal suit of armor. So what does that mean? Because every time players face an animated armor the first time and get hit, every other time after that, they assume all animated armor is going to move. So it isn't actually telling me any information. It isn't telling me enough information to determine, does that mean that it gets advantage on stealth checks because it's staying still? Does that mean that it gets surprise on the player characters because it's staying still? Does this mean that the players don't know that it's going to attack them? Like, what is it telling me in terms of how it's going to be approached? Like, it's almost a nothing burger. It's like telling me that water is wet. You know what I mean? It's essentially that one sentence with false appearance is like saying, Fred, you know water, it's wet. And you're like, oh, really? So there's a problem. So we need to fix all of this stuff. And I think the only way it can be fixed is to get rid of the challenge rating 1 idea. It is totally inappropriate for this monster. But we still want a challenge 1 monster, don't we? We still want a monster you can use at level 1. For level 1 characters, that's challenge rating 1, and that's not animated armor. Now, I looked at AD&D, and it's not clear what there is. I looked at Shadow Dark. They list it as a level 2 monster. I don't think it's right. I looked at their monster and I disagree with how they've built it. But that's beside the point. We're dealing with this. We're dealing with 5e in 2025. So how do we fix it? First off, we get rid of the yellow on the challenge rating. It is no longer a challenge rating 1 monster. Okay? If we want an armor class of 18, using my table here, 18, where's 18 come up? Oh, 12. Leveled, so challenge rating 12. Now, even if we use the older monster menu, older Dungeon Master Guide, 2014, and look at the quick build table at the back there, which is not necessarily going to be hugely accurate, but at least it's something, since 2024 doesn't offer you a damn thing. It says armor class should be a 17. I have found that to be not correct. This is why I have a different table. Okay, this table is not available to everybody. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it is still in development, but 17 is not good enough. Not for characters that are going to be level 12. Challenge rating 12, they're going to be about level 12. So that means if we want to keep that armor class, since it really should be an 18 for armor class, because they're wearing plate armor in 5e. That's what it is. It needs to be challenge rating 12. This is how many experience points it is. Now we can keep our 18. That's fine, because it's in line with our table right here. Okay? Challenge rating 12, 18, and that means it's going to have a proficiency bonus of 4, not 2, because it's a higher level monster, and it should be. So we're going to change that as well. Bum, 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 just like that. Okay, next thing. It's got an initiative, which I'm not worried about the dexterity of this monster, but I do not want it to be crushed like a bug. If you look at the new animated armor, this is the old one, it doesn't give you the initiative bonus, but the new one does. And you'll see what they've done here. Dexterity modifier is 0, and they must have given it proficiency in initiative, because it's a +2, or 12 is the passive one. So we're going to approach it in a similar way for this monster. Since it is got a proficiency bonus of 4 now, instead of a +2, we're going to make it a 4. Okay? So I'm going to take that same design approach. I think this design approach is actually really smart. Otherwise, monsters wind up going last. Monsters that go last are sad sacks, and they die very quickly. Okay? Next. We have another problem here in that our monster has nowhere near enough hit points. Like how many hit points do we really need to have to be hitting or be in the range of where we need to be? And I had to think really hard about whether I thought it was necessary to give this monster a really high constitution. It's got a lot of really low, and low intelligence is fine, low wisdom, low charisma. These are all fine. What we need to do though is we need to consider that these hit points are going to have to be significantly higher, because it's now challenge rating 12. It needed to be higher anyway. It really did. Like the number that they were hitting, if you had left it as a challenge rating 1 monster, right? You should be having about 71 to 85 hit points for your monster at its maximum. And the maximum is only 42. So you literally have to double if you were to keep it a challenge rating 1 monster. But we're not going to do that. It's getting moved into a different bracket completely. So I'm undoing this. I did a lot of maths in advance, so if you're wondering what the heck I'm up to, it should be a bit clearer in a second. And we just need to move this along. Things will get shifted around a lot, people. Just bear with me. Okay. I'm trying to do this in such a way so that I have plenty of time to show you how I would go about building the other 2 stat blocks, since we're not just doing animated armor today. We're doing animated wooden statue and animated stone statue. The next problem. We need to consider what is our expected attack bonus likely to be. Oh, hang on. Let's explain the maths behind the hit points. So if you have a look at challenge rating 12, since it's now 12, I need between 236 and 250 hit points. And you'll see that the top end is 43 hit points. 243. Okay? So that's in the pickle barrel. That's right there. We don't actually have to, even though this is a high level monster, we don't have to give it a high con. Remember that hit points are just a timer. Okay? Would most characters have at least a +2? Yes, they probably would. Does that mean we could bump this one up a little bit? Yes, it does. But we don't have to necessarily do that. We're still sitting in the pickle barrel. However we wind up doing it, it's going to wind up shifting it only by, +2 is just going to mean we wind up taking off 1 dice here, which we could do, right? So I'm going to come back to this in a second in the con, because this is a choice where you could go either way and I think it would be fine. Next, strength. If we are challenge rating 12 and we are facing characters of level 12, what is their expected hit, bonus or, to their character that they have, their modifier, their main modifier that they're going to do all their stuff with? It's not +2. We cannot give them +2 to strength and add proficiency bonus 4 and wind up with an attack bonus of 6 and think that level 12 characters can keep up with them anymore. No, that's not even remotely likely. We have to change that significantly. Challenge rating 12 needs to have an attack bonus of 10. Why is that? Couple of reasons. One, at level 1, they're probably going to have a 16 in their core or their key or primary ability score, the 16. That means they have a +3. Okay, +3. Then at level 4, they're going to get their ability and score improvement, or they'll take a feat. If they take a feat, tough. Okay, so increase their, at level 4 goes up. So that means they're now an 18 at level 4 and a +4. Okay. Then at level 8, it's going to go up again. Ability score improvement or feat. You take the ability score improvement if you're smart. You take the feat if you want to be more complicated. And that means we're now 20. 20 in our primary ability score is now maxed out at level 8. Okay, that means a +5. At level 12, the characters can boost their ability scores, but they can't go beyond 20. They're not allowed to. But there are a whole bunch of ways that you can. There are ways of making it, magic items can do it. There are ways of doing this. There are ways of pushing it a little bit higher. So we can expect the players to have a proficiency bonus of +4 at level 12 and a +5, which means that's a 9. But because of all of the bonuses, you can get like a +1 to melee or +1, or sometimes it's +2 to archery. You can get a lot of that stuff coming in. It's not so much the case with spellcasters. Getting a +1 to your ability to make a spell range or melee attack is not that common. But there are magic items out there that can do that. I think we can assume that we need to have this being a bit higher. So we're going to go higher. We're going to go 22, which means this has to be not a 5, but a 6. And that's how we get our 10. Okay? This is a given for this monster. It needs to be hitting in this range. So we go down and we make sure that our attacks, whatever they are +10. Okay? So +6, +4 comes to 10. That is what we need to be doing in terms of our hits. Okay? And you'll notice here that I have already incorporated it for. I've given it a great sword. So animated armor usually is holding a sword of some kind. I feel like a great sword is more appropriate than a long sword or a broadsword or a shield or anything. So just a great sword. Do a bit more damage. Less likely to wind up, just being a single-handed fighting machine. I think that's more in line with what you were after in the first place. So we need to look at how much damage we can do this way. Okay? Right, so going back up here, let's have a look and see how the rest of this works. And this is skills. This thing does not have any skills. Like, they never gave it any skills. Why? Because it's animated, they figure it doesn't need it. But it's pre-programmed by whoever created it. So there's probably something that needs to happen here for this to work. And the problem is, animated armor animated wooden statues or animated statues, stone or wood, whatever it is, they are specifically put there so that they can detect and discover intruders. And if intruders can't be detected, then there's a problem. So there's a couple of things we can do here. We can either change our wisdom score and give it proficiency, okay, or we can give it proficiency and expertise to counter it, to counter the fact that our guardian will not be able to detect shit, not with a -4. So how do we solve this? I decided that the best way was to go with keep the wisdom score the same and boost the and just boost the perception that it has so that it can actually detect enemies and intruders by giving it proficiency and expertise. But we could also change the wisdom score and still sit here with a perception of +4 by just giving it proficiency. We could make this a 10, that would be a +0, and that would be fine. It doesn't really have a brain. It's not like animated armor is very bright. It doesn't have high intelligence. High intelligence is not necessary. It should be weak to this. And it doesn't have any saving throws. And I don't think animated armor necessarily needs to have saving throws to stuff. There aren't a lot of spells that have a charisma or intelligence saving throw most of the time. So, yeah. Now, stealth is an issue. Stealth, this is an ambush monster. That's what animated armor is supposed to be. Yet it does not ambush because its dexterity is a +0 for the modifier. It's not apparently proficient. But also on top of that, I give it an expertise. Here's the problem. It's animated armor. It moves. When it moves, it makes noise. But when it doesn't move, there's no real penalty, is there? If you stay still, there's no penalty. But if you were to sneak up behind somebody, there would be a problem. But what if you decided to step, animated armor steps off the podium or pedestal or dais or whatever, and then attacks you? Really, we shouldn't be giving away ourselves too much by doing that, right? But I think how the rules are written sort of suggests if we don't have some sort of stealth modifier to make them better at doing something, there's going to be a problem. So I've done this. I'm going to leave these highlighted because I know there's still a couple of different ways we can do this. We can, if we want, change the way this works and not make it quite so good. And I'm going to highlight this again. How am I doing for time? Oh, I've already chewed up a lot of time. Okay. Damage immunities, poison and psychic. I have no problem. They are originally in the stat block. The new one still retains them. The old one still has them. They make perfect sense. That's fine. No problems. Condition immunities. It doesn't really have eyes, so it can't be blinded. It's got no eyeballs. It can't be charmed because really these things shouldn't be able to be charmed. It is an automaton. It doesn't function that way. Deafened. It doesn't have any ears. How do you deafen it? Can't deafen it. Can't be exhausted. It's just basically a machine. Can't be frightened because it doesn't fear anything. It has no life. Paralyzed. These were all here before. Petrified, poisoned. These are all things that already existed in the stat block, and I think we keep them. I did notice that they did remove blinded from the new stat block, and the old one did have blinded as a condition immunity. We are keeping blinded. Okay, you can't blind this thing. It doesn't use eyeballs, so waste of time. Now it has blind sight to 60 feet and blind beyond this radius. So 60 feet should be enough to cover the room that you're dealing with, or the hallway. So we're going to keep this pretty much how it is. I don't think this is a big problem. I am pretty much happy to keep that as it is. So let's go here. I'm going to just get rid of this. Yep, okay. We're going to keep the passive perception, okay, at 14. Because, look, we can do it a couple of ways. We can make our wisdom a bit higher and still keep the +4 and perception, which I think it needs to have. Even at level, most players take perception as a skill because it's the super skill in the game. It's the skill that everybody needs the most. Okay, So that means whatever their wisdom score is, which is probably a 0 or a 1, if they're not specialised in it, and then they add their proficiency bonus, they've got usually a 4 or a 5 already. And we don't want to put the animated armour so far behind them they can't keep up. That would be stupid. So there are a couple of ways of doing this. But no matter what, perception is going to be a +4, stealth can be lower, but we would still need to make some adjustments to, because stealth is another thing that people tend to take. Although you could say it's just the rogue that takes it, and maybe the ranger and so forth, the sneaky characters. Okay, keep going down. Let's have a look at some of these abilities, which I have partially rewritten. I've got two versions. I've got the old version. You'll notice that the new stat block has removed both of them, and the old stat block has them. But there are some problems with these. So, anti-magic susceptibility. The armor is incapacitated while in the area of an anti-magic field. Okay, blah, 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 blah. If targeted by dispel magic, the armor must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against the caster's spell save DC, or fall unconscious for 1 minute. It's a contest, it's complicated, it's unnecessary. I don't think we need to have it there. Dispel magic already has mechanics in the game to allow you to deal with this. Like, we do not need to base it off con. Remember, our con is only a +1. We could go up even to a +2, but the reality is, we don't even have to have this mechanic here. This whole bit here is unnecessary. Dispel magic has a mechanic. It's very simple. If you want to dispel a magical effect like animated armor, like if you animate armor, the animate spell, animate object, right? If you want to dispel something and it's a level 3 or lower spell, it just removes it. That's what dispel magic does. But if it's higher than level 3 and animated armor is level 5 spell, then it's 10 plus the spell level that's been cast on it. So that means that the DC for the dispel magic just needs to be a DC 15. Is that out of line with the challenge rating 12 that we have here? Yeah, it says that saving throw should be an 18. But it's a spell that's cast on a piece of armor. It's not based on the armor class. It's not about how good the armor is, the animated armor is at resisting stuff. It's about how powerful was the spellcaster who cast the spell at the time. So we could make it a 15 and that would solve so many problems, or we could make it an 18 if we really wanted. Do you know what I mean? But this whole thing is unnecessary because look, I would just done that whole section, since it's confusing, and replace it with this. Anti-magic susceptibility. The statue is incapacitated in an anti-magic field. Shorter sentence. If targeted by dispel magic, the statue is the armor is incapacitated. Is no longer animated. No longer animated with a DC 15 animated with a DC 15 spellcasting check. Now, we could go 15, we could go 18. I wouldn't really worry too much about it. It's really up to you how you would like to mark it out. But I think that there is probably a smarter way of addressing this. I know DC 15 feels low, which means that you could shut down animated armor pretty easily at higher levels, like level 12 characters, a DC 15 spellcasting check. What's the likelihood that they succeed on that? Well, they've probably got a +5, right, when they make their spellcasting check, and they're adding 10. That's the DC that we've got here. They roll 50-50 chance they succeed. There's a pretty good chance they succeed. Okay, so we're going to come back to this and see how people have... We can go 15 to 18. That could be our range if you wanted to. Set a DC, end of story. Saves you rolling dice as the game master, so you don't have to do that sort of nonsense, and then comparing stuff. If it's just a number they have to roll against, it's a lot easier. Okay, now we could say the DC 18 represents, or even a 16 or a 17, represents that the spell was cast at a higher level by the magic user that animated the armor. So that logically there's no real problem with it being a higher DC than 15. Yep. Okay, next, false appearance. Problem with false appearance, and also the problem with animated armor, is this. False appearance. While the armor remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from normal suits of armor. As I have explained before, it's like saying water is wet. So that has got to go. Sorry, it's gone. And now we have false appearance. This is what I am going to suggest to you. And there could be a provisor that if it moves, that it has disadvantage on stealth checks, dexterity stealth checks. Okay. The problem is, if I write that in, what I think players will argue with the Game Master about is that if your monster, your animated armor, is standing there motionless and then goes to attack you, it's moved. Well, now it's moved, it's moving. Before it had the stealth thing, but unless it's standing right beside you, it has to make an attack before, to not give away its position. I think that would be the argument that players would put forward. And I don't want the Game Master having to go through the arguments with players who want to argue to the cows go home. So if it's here and the players are 10 feet, 15 feet, 30, 25 feet away, and it wants to surprise, it's going to surprise them. Essentially, we're trying to give them surprise, right? Surprise them so it can launch forward and make an attack on its turn. There's going to be you should have disadvantage because plate armor gives you, my plate armor gives me disadvantage if I move. Why are you not getting disadvantage when you move? This is why I don't think it's a good idea to incorporate it has disadvantage if it moves. And I would imagine that we may even have to make some adjustments to false appearance to deal with the fact that players will be very focused on the fact that their armor, their plate armor, gives them disadvantage when they try to sneak around. So we've got to find some way of rectifying this in the false appearance ability. But I think this is a better wording for it. I'm going to leave it for now. We'll come back to it. Next, attack. How much damage do I need to do with my monster at level 12, like challenge rating 12? Well, it should be doing 3 attacks. If you have a look at my table here, it should be doing 3 attacks, and each attack should be doing 45 to 49 points of damage. Wow, okay. It doesn't do that. We are close, though. We're close. We're very, very close. We could just change the modifier here, and we're so close to where we need to be. So this number's not quite right because I had a +2 there before, right? And it's not a +2 anymore. It's going to be a +6 when it does any kind of attack. So hang on, let's not jump the gun just yet. So this is a +6. If it smacks you with its fist like a slam attack, it would be a +6. So that would be a 3, 6, 9. Okay, and this is going to be a bit higher, and I'll do the calculation for this in a second. So 2 attacks won't be enough. It needs to be 3. If it was just a challenge rating 1 monster, I would say it should have 2 attacks, and each attack should be doing between 5 and 7 points of damage. And the old one, I believe, worked that way. The new one is doing about that much damage. It doesn't do, its attack bonus is terrible. Even by 1 point, it's going to be a bit of an issue. But it's hitting in the range that you would expect for challenge rating 1. But we're not challenge rating 1 now. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. So this is now doing 3 attacks. Since all those suits of armor that didn't attack them for the last 11 character levels is now finally going to attack them. We're going to have a slam attack, which is doing a +10. We're doing that much bludgeoning. And I am fine leaving the slam attack at being really lightweight, because this is not the attack you would use. Okay, the attack you want is the one with the great sword. If they manage to disarm it and get the sword off them, it doesn't have a sword, you still have a slam attack, you still have the maths for it. Okay, but we want the weapon attack that we want to make is 3 great sword attacks that are doing a bucket load more damage than it currently is. So let's get our calculator out. And let's do some maths and figure out if we're hitting in the pickle barrel. So 12 six-sided dice is a lot of dice. If you're running a monster like this, you shouldn't be rolling 12 six-sided dice. Just use a dice roller, people, or use the average damage. Okay, so so average of 6 is 3.5, and we multiply that by 12. Okay, that's 42, and then I add 6 for the strength modifier, is 48. Is that outside the realm of where we needed to be? No, it's right. I needed 45 to 49. So 48. 48's good. 48 is the number we want. That's how much damage at that level. 3 attacks doing 48 points of damage on average. Much more what we were after. And that is your key attacks for your animated armor done. Now, you were probably thinking, well, what distinguishes this monster from other monsters? What distinguishes animated armor from any other monster is the fact that it is going to probably surprise you. So the mechanics have to support that in some way. This is why I've been leaning into stealth. Now, I've gone over and explained how I would do animated armor, and I am open to making some slight adjustments to con. Hit points are probably going to be very similar. Perception, stealth, and rewording anti-magic susceptibility and false appearance. I'm open to those. So let's have a look and see what people have to say, because I'm curious now. And since I've been talking for a long time, almost 40 minutes. Okay, a lot of people weighing in here. Great. Let's see what people have to say, and we'll see if we're on the same page. I did notice that a lot of people do think that its animated armor is either needs to be changed or they're not sure. They're undecided. Okay, now there's a comment at the very top. Okay, so Joshua. Hello, Joshua Brick. Same problem as introducing a mimic in early levels. That's Joshua, you're so right. Introducing a mimic at low level is a problem as well. It's absolutely a giant headache. I agree, for sure. It needs to have its challenge rating adjusted for it to work, and it also needs to be given something that allows it to actually do what it's supposed to do, which is be an ambush monster, right? Okay. Turbo Wolf, you do not need to be sorry. You can be late. It's all right. Now I'm going to get this name wrong, but I apologize now. Is it Joa Ameliad? Good night, friends. Oh, he's already gone. Carlos. Good night. He's gone. Carlos is gone as well. Okay. Even a wild magic sorcerer at first level doesn't have any anti-magic dispel magic capacities. I thought that they might have been the reason to include it this low. No, they didn't include anything. So look, it's not like players walk around with anti-magic fields on or walk around casting dispel magic all the time. And if they do manage to dispel the magic of an animated suit of armor, good for them. Okay? That's one spell down. A whole bunch more left to go. The old 2014 customizing monsters AC list seems to me to be assuming a party with 0 magic items or something. Yeah, it is designed around that. Yes, that's right. I kind of assume that there will be some, but not a lot. So it's very hard to build into the game, since 5e was designed to be able to be played without magic items, which is really strange, but it's there. But yes, you're right, Joshua. Fred Hubert is a patron and a moderator. How's it going? Making creatures dangerous again. Yes. Stealth proficiency when standing still. And now, no, I'm not going to do that. That is too bloody complicated, Fred. Okay. But advantage, yes. Okay. Proficiency, no. If it's going to be proficient, it needs to be proficient. I think that's where we need to be at. We don't even have to give it expertise if we don't want to, but there's got to be some sort of proficiency in stealth. I am open to the idea that if it moves, it can give itself away. But the reality is that we've got to be careful how we word that, because the players will just make it impossible for the monster to do what it's supposed to do. So we have to structure it in such a way that it's going to work, right? But I'm glad somebody's weighed in on the proficiency stuff. Carlos, here we go. What have we got, Carlos? I used to just make the animated armor magical armor. This means it is not a puzzle. If you beat it to death, you just destroy the magic of the magic armor. It was only animated within the castle. Okay. All right. Interesting. Is an animated armor created by making an animated armor spell permanent? Possibly. Possibly. Oh, okay, Carlos. Oh, it was the other person, right, who left. Okay, so let's have a look at how we can adjust our animated armor just a fraction. Okay, so it's more in line with where we're sort of thinking. I'm going to put forward my request again. How would you make animated armor? Stat block. So we'll put that forward again. And let's go back to my thing and let's make a few adjustments. And then I'm going to show you what I've been doing with the other two stat blocks I was talking about. So we've got animated statue, which is wooden and stone. And I figured we needed to make those, so I have. How am I doing for time? All right. So I highlighted con because it's such a high-level monster. I was thinking that most characters, even a wizard, has probably got a +2 to their con. And yet this thing doesn't have a con modifier. It's not really alive. You know, it's not like it's a living creature. So I'm all right with it being quite low. It really doesn't matter a lot, but it's a 13. It's kind of in between 12 and 14. So we could go here and go 14, make that a +2. Hit that there. This changes our calculation for our hit points if we do this. So the other two stat blocks will be a lot faster, by the way, because I've built them already. Okay, I'll just explain why I built them the way they did. So then what we do here is we take our 27 8-sided dice and we're going to multiply it by a few things. So 27 multiplied by 2 now gives us 54, which is a lot of hit points. Right? So now we have to consider the fact that if we're doing that, we're literally like doubling the number of hit points that they have now, which means it's going to throw out our top end by a lot. So we'd have to adjust things down, right? So that's 27 multiplied by 8 for the 8-sided dice. It's 216 plus 54. So that's 270. Is way too high. 270 for challenge rating. So we need to knock off a good 20 points to make this work. So we'd probably have to, for something like that, if it's an 8-sided dice and the average is about 4.5. So 4 into 20. How many is that going to go in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times. So if we push this down to say 5, let's go 21. So we're not too far near the top end. Okay, and then we'll recalculate our number and see how we go. So 21 multiplied by 8. You remember I'm working with the top end, not the average here. Okay, and then add the, no, we're going to change this number again, don't we? Forgot about that. This is going to be different because now we're going 21 times 2. 21 times 2 for the con modifier. Whoopsies, try that again, Fred. 21 times 2, 42. There you go. So 42. Okay, so that's our number. We've got our new calculation or formula. Let's see if it's going to hit where we need to be. We need to be very, very close to 243, somewhere in that range. So now, top end, 21 times 8 equals 168 plus 42 is 210. Okay, all right. So 210 is too low. So we've probably taken too much off. We're dealing with a lot of dice here. So let's add in, let's make it 3. Okay, let's make it 3. So that's 23 times 2. Oops, that's 23 times 2. Yes, it's 46 for our addition. It's for the con modifier bonus. Okay, that's that one done. And then we do our top end, which is 23 times 8-sided dice. It's 184. Now we add this plus the 46. It's 230. Are we in the pickle barrel? We're just off by 1. Okay, so let's add one more, which means we recalculate again. And that means 24 times the con modifier, which is 2, is now 48. Here we go. Our new numbers are in. So recalculate again. 24 times 8 for the dice that we're using. Then we add the 48. Is 240. Now 240 is where we need to be, between 236 and 250. So perfect. That'll do. That's nice. 240. So it's got to only drop down a couple of hit points from what I had before. Now the 240 is for experienced players, right? If they're facing it. And you're not. This is not a solo monster. You're probably going to have more than one, right? You shouldn't be just throwing one animated armor at them. That would be stupid. It's not a legendary monster. It's not a solo monster. And then we need to do our average. So let's do the average. Average of 8 is 4.5. Multiplied by 24 is 108. Then add this, 48. Comes to 156. Okay, I think I got my maths right. Let's take this, unhighlight. So now our con modifier is just a little bit different. It's more in line with probably what you might get from some of the lower level, the less combat focused characters. And that may need to change later if 240 is not enough. I would say at level 12, 240 is probably 1.5 rounds for one suit of armor. Probably 1.5 rounds and then it's gone. For that level of character. Okay, next. Let's have a look at the wisdom. Now, the problem with the wisdom is perception. Like, I have to give expertise to this thing for it to even have a modifier for perception. The easiest way is just to make this 10. This is why I highlighted it. I wanted to see if anybody was going to say anything. I'm all right with the thing having like no intelligence because it's a brainless suit of armor, right? And wisdom, it could just be average, just pre-programmed to do a certain thing. 10 is like average human, right? That would be fine. Average humans aren't that good at fighting, really. A suit of armor can be pre-programmed with very basic swing the sword this way. So we could do that, and that would get rid of the expertise, which would feel a little less crazy. So let's do that. And let's just make this a 0. So now we're only really giving the suit of armor proficiency in perception so that it can identify our player characters when they're doing something. A lot of characters only have a wisdom modifier of 0, sometimes 1 at the best. That's fine. Stealth. Do we need to deal with stealth being as high as it is? Okay. I'm kind of curious as to how people are responding to these changes. But I'm I'm also going to lean into this here, anti-magic susceptibility. I'm going to undo this. Now, I said DC 15 to 18. Because it's a high-level monster and because we can assume that probably the spellcaster is casting at a higher level so that it's a strong monster, we can just make it an 18. We've told them exactly how it works, okay? If targeted by the spell magic, the armor is no longer animated with a DC 18 spellcasting check. That is the check you make when you're dispelling magic, okay? We've told them exactly what the number is. They don't have to figure it out. It's done, okay? And DC 18 is what you should have at level 12. That's kind of the numbers we're dealing with. Yep. They've got their proficiency bonus, which is a +4 for players. Okay, they've got 4, and then they're adding their 8 to that 4. Okay, because you normally do. And what is the DC for their DCs? 8 and 4. That's 12, and then to that they're adding a 5. So this is usually going to be about a 17. So this is going to be an 18. But this is a high level monster. It should be tough. So that's probably where it needs to sit. So we're going to leave that there. Next, this is a problem because we have to decide, is this good enough to make it possible for the monster to be able to surprise our player characters, or is it not going to work? If it's not going to work, then we need to change it. Okay. I'm going to go over here back to the chat very quickly before I put in my last little bits and pieces on the animated armor. How about a variant on top of an animated horse armor displaying a lance? Well, you guys can make that. Go for it. Make that. I don't have to make that though, because I don't have time. I don't have time. But we could do that if we wanted to. Here we go. Let's go back to where we were and do this armor. Okay, so here's my rationale for why I give the armor stealth as a proficiency and as an expertise, because it is fundamentally an ambush monster. Do I want to acknowledge that if it moves, it's probably going to give away its position? Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay? It is made of metal. It's going to jingle. That's all right. I get it. But it has to have something like this. And I don't want to push the dexterity modifier up because I don't think it's necessary for this to be, more than just average in terms of dex. So I think this is where we need to be sitting. And what that does is it helps deal with the fact that it's going to have disadvantage on the check if it's moving, because it's animated armor and it's plate. And we will actually write this in. We'll write this in here so it's clear. Okay. I know that they don't normally do this nowadays in 2025. They don't usually write in, oh, it's wearing this type of armor, but we probably should do that because the more and more I see how they've designed things, the more and more I think that that was actually probably a very silly mistake on their part, because it tells you a lot of information. Plate armor. Okay, so we're going to give it plate armor. We've got our initiative. We're going to acknowledge that it is probably designed to be sneaky. That is how it's programmed, to move quietly, but we don't want to eliminate the expected penalty of -1 if it's a passive check, or the disadvantage. So we've got to give it some sort of stealth ability. So we're gonna leave that there. Okay, so it's proficient and expertise, and that will make it much more likely to be successful on ambushing our player characters. Going back to here, false appearance. This means that if it doesn't move, it is going to get. It automatically succeeds on dexterity stealth checks to hide if it doesn't move. Not advantage. Automatically succeeds. I think that is what ultimately this feature was supposed to say here, and it didn't. So now we have that. So this is what I would say is the new animated armor stat block. Okay. And God hope I have, am I actually showing it to you this time? I'm curious as to see how people feel. I feel like this is an alpha play test. You know, this still requires testing to see if it works. You can't just change the maths on something and think it's going to be fine. You do actually have to test stuff. And even in this case, this would still require testing to see if it works. I think this greatsword attack is a much better idea than the slam. But we do have the slam if you want to use that. Okay. And I'm going to put in, we've got space, so let's say it. Recommended to DM. If it isn't bloody obvious, you should be using the greatsword. If it's got a greatsword, whack him with the greatsword. Okay, all right. So that's that one. And then we're going to go and see what chat has to say very quickly. And then I'm going to do false appearance an option. I don't think so. I don't think false appearance should be an option. I think it's something that animated armor does well, just like a gargoyle does really well, just like any animated statue does well. I think the idea, even the roper false appearance needs to have a lot more weight to it. And it needs to explain what's going on here. Yeah? Okay, so what do we got here? Derp. Derp is a patron and a moderator. How's it going, Derp? Okay, negative space. I would think someone could know it is an animated armor by looking at it and seeing it isn't being held up by a rack, but don't have an idea for how to easily write that. I think it's how you describe the animated armor. I think you have to always put animated armor on a rack, or if it's not on a rack, it needs to be on a stand, and it pulls itself off the stand. That is really about describing the armor so that you can use it as animated armor. The other thing too is this comes down to the Dungeon Master deciding that as soon as somebody comes within 60 feet of its blind sight, it activates. As soon as they come within that range, it activates and it moves towards them. It moves slowly, but it activates. So if they open a door and the suit of armor needs to be close to the door when they open the door, it activates and it only has to move a couple of feet to get at them. Then surprise is much more likely to happen. If you have a long hallway and it's longer than the 60 feet, then there's a problem because the animated armor isn't going to work. So now it's about how a game master positions their animated armor to work properly. Now that I have changed animated armor fundamentally, even for Shadow Dark, like now my favorite game, frankly, because it's only a challenge rating, or should I say monster level, not challenge rating, monster level 2, and it's kind of a pussy. You know, it's going to get crushed pretty easily. It's not going to do very much. I need to give you a stat block that is challenge rating 1, don't I? Correct? So let's do that. Let's go over the next thing. And that is not the animated armor, but the animated statue. Because that is what you want to use, right? Again, animated statues are going to, once they are used, you pretty much can't do anything with them anymore. Like it's over Grover. Like the surprise is gone. So here we go. Looking at this and how we can build it. First things I would do is it is going to be challenge rating 1. And its initiative is, I didn't change its dex. Okay. For challenge rating 1, what should be armor class for this? Well, it's a wooden statue. So it can be 13. It doesn't need to be that hard. Like some wood is like ironwood, is like iron. It's so tough. You can't get a chainsaw through it very easily at all. It takes a long time. Other wood, very easy to cut down. So animated wooden statue, armor class 13, fine. We can do that. That's much more in line with challenge rating 1. Proficiency bonus +2. Great. Got that. Okay. We're going to not mess around with, we're not going to mess around with its initiative too much, other than give it proficiency. And its dexterity can stay where it is. It can be just an 11. It doesn't need to be any more or better than it was before. So that means it's going to have +2 to initiative and a passive initiative of 12. Got it. We'll keep the speed the same. Now it's about how many hit points do I need to have. Well, for challenge rating 1, we need to have 71 to 85 hit points. This monster has 72 hit points. So you'll see we're just in the bottom end of the bracket at the top end. And then the average I've worked out. So 8d8 plus 8, and we get these numbers for our hit points. You use the low number for inexperienced players. You use the high number for the more experienced players. Okay? And if you want to see how the numbers crunch out, I will show you very quickly. So 8 times the 8-sided dice is 64. And then, of course, if you multiply 8 by your con modifier, which is 1, you get 8. So add 8. 72 is the top end. Okay? The average is 4.5. Multiply that by 8. And we get 36. Add 8. 44. So there are our hit points. So that's exactly what we need. You'll notice that this is, at the top end, is quite a lot more than the other stat block you had for the animated armor. Animated armor was pretty pussy. Like it has gone up a lot for the animated statue. I've gone and pushed it a lot further up. Now, one of the other things I did is the strength score, how strong it is. Animated armor is way too weak. It needs to be much stronger. You're dealing with characters who are level 1. That means they probably have a 16 in their primary ability. That means that the animated armor, at the very least, needs to have a 16 itself. So 16 plus 3, that's what I've done. Now, you can make adjustments to a lot of these things. I don't think you need to do too much. Wisdom is one we could, because even if I give it proficiency and expertise and perception, it winds up being a 0, which is shit, right? Like, it's a really bad number. So we can do the same thing with the wisdom that we did with the other one. We could go 10, which gives us a 0 modifier. And now our proficiency, if we add proficiency to perception, our wisdom score, or wisdom modifier, we can get a +2. So we've got a much better chance of actually noticing anybody coming in who's an intruder, just like we did with the animated armor. The animated wooden statue has now got a better chance. Now, it's wood. I want to make it vulnerable to fire. Will the players figure that out? Absolutely. Will it ultimately matter? Maybe. But it has a lot more hit points now. And is everybody going to be able to do fire damage? Maybe the spellcasters. Marshals aren't going to have necessarily a weapon that does fire damage. Because this monster, animated wooden statue, is something you face at level 1. You probably don't have a flaming sword at level 1. So that's fine. We should be all good. What if they use a torch? A torch only does 1 point of fire damage. They could use alchemist fire. So they do 6 points of damage, and then they double it because it's vulnerable, so maybe it's going to wind up doing at the most 12. It's not that much. I wouldn't worry about it. I'd keep going. Good. Well done. That was the right time to buy the alchemist fire. That was the right time to use I mean, they're not going to use a torch on a statue to burn it when they could just whack it with their sword, right? So I wouldn't worry about that at all. Next, damage immunities. Poison and psychic. I've added those. I think those, well, I didn't add them. They were already there before, really, from the animated armor, so we're keeping them. All of the condition immunities are exactly the same. The blind sight, 60 feet, fine with me. If you find that 60 feet is too short, extend it if you have a long hallway. Passive perception is now 12, no languages, and anti-magic susceptibility. The statue is incapacitated in a anti-magic field. If targeted by dispel magic, the statue is now, it says incapacitated. We probably need to change the wording from incapacitated to is no longer animated. And the DC is going to be a little odd. And there's a reason why it needs to be a little odd, okay? Because casting that spell at that level is literally going to shut down the monster, right? And I'm not against that idea, but the likelihood of it happening is also pretty slim. So we get rid of incapacitated, because dispel magic is going to do a lot more. And here, is no longer animated with a DC 15 spellcasting check. That is because the spell animate object is a 5th level spell, and Dispel Magic works by 10 plus the spell level that was cast on it. I'm assuming that animated wooden statues are cast at the lowest level rather than the highest level. And is the DC in line with a level 1 character? Absolutely not. But this is one of those times where you literally, if you cast the spell, you would destroy it. Are the players going to have Dispel Magic at level 1 or 2 or 3 or 4? No. They don't get to level 5. It's not a big deal. I would not worry about it. It can have a high DC like this. Okay, because this is only going to be affecting characters who have Dispel Magic, and most of the time they don't. And they certainly won't have anti-magic field going up. Like it is still in line with what makes sense and the animated armor, and that's how I would build it for this. Okay, next, going down. False appearance. Again, I think you stick with that. You'll see the stealth score. I've gone with proficiency and expertise to circumvent the fact that it needs to be able to be an ambush creature or monster. Okay, it is designed to be a guardian of some kind. So I've kept the wording for this exactly the same. Automatic success on dexterity stealth checks as long as it doesn't move. Okay, if it stays in, motionless, it's going to get the drop on them. It's waiting. Basically, animated armor is waiting for the player characters to do something, like get in range so it can do something, or get close enough that it can surprise them. Okay, let's keep going. Multi-attack. The statue makes 2 melee attacks. Now it's challenge rating 1 now. Challenge rating 1 should have 2 attacks, between 5 and 7 points of damage. Are we doing that? Yes, we are. Right smack there. So it does a +3 because of the strength, using a 6-sided dice because it's a slam. I'm assuming that these things aren't like a normal punch to the face. I know most player characters are punching with a plus, is it +1 to their strength modifier when they're making an unarmed strike. This is a solid statue, so it's going to be punching a little bit harder, right? And that is the only thing it does. It doesn't have a weapon in its hand. If you want to put a weapon in its hand, you do that, okay? That is the animated wooden statue stat block, which I will put onto Patreon, of course. Next, animated stone statue. Let's go down here. I did the work on this. I was trying to decide what I needed to do with this for it to really work for you at the right time. And I built it for challenge rating 6. But I think that's a mistake now. What I think I need to do is I need to build it for challenge rating 5. So there's a nice sort of interim between the animated wooded statue and the animated armor. And so we're going to push this down to challenge rating 5. Why is that? I want an armor class of 15. I'm assuming that this stone statue is not granite. Okay? It's not going to be that hard. It's probably more like something like marble or whatever. Marble's a relatively soft stone, so you can damage it. And it's prone to cracking as well if you hit it hard enough or something. So that's another thing. So that's where my head is at. We have an armor class of 13, then a 15, and then we have an 18 for the animated armor. So let's retool this to work the way we need it to. If it is not going to be challenge rating 6 and it's going to be challenge rating 5, how much do I need to change? Proficiency bonus and armor class can stay the same. The attack bonus can stay the same. The damage will change a little bit. The number of attacks will be fine. Okay, so let's go down the track. So proficiency is the same as here. We're going to give it its proficiency bonus to initiative so that it actually gets to take its turn, hopefully near the top rather than near the bottom. We'll make this a 5, like I said I would. And we will 5, and then what am I doing here? Oh, 5, we need to change the amount of experience points that you get for it, which is going to be a 1 and an 8. Okay, am I showing you guys the stuff? Yeah, thank God for that. Okay. So, when you want to use animated armor, use the animated wooden statue instead. Okay? when you want to use something that's a little bit better than the wooden animated wooden statue, you use the animated stone statue. And then when you need something much better, then you use the animated armor. Okay, and that gives you time to reinforce in the player's minds that animated armor does not come to life and try to kill them. Okay, next, hit points. Our hit points may be just a teeny weeny bit high for challenge rating 5 now. It should be between 131 and 145. And we are just a teeny weeny high. So let's just adjust it. You notice I haven't adjusted the con modifier. Why? I don't think we need to worry too much about that sort of thing. I think at level 1 and at level 5, I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you want to adjust that, you can, but I mean, ultimately, I'm happy for it to be where it is. All I want to make sure is the thing will work when it needs to work. Okay, so let's go here. And hit points are just they're really just a timer, right? So make that a 16. So now we just need to recalculate our armor class, our hit points, not our armor class. So if we go 16 times 8 equals 128, add the 16 this time. It's 144. Is that what we needed? Yep, 131 to 145. So 144, close enough. It's close enough. Okay. And at level 5, there's a big power boost, so we can be at the top end of it, and it really won't be a big issue as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so half of 8 is 4.5. Multiply this by 16. Plus 16. And our average is now 88. So inexperienced players use 88. More experienced players use 144 hit points for this monster. So for those of you who are wondering, how do I build and make monsters for 2025? We're doing it right now. We're literally doing it right now, okay? Okay, now, we had the same discussion before about wisdom, right? I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to get rid of that huge, horrible penalty. I am happy for it to have a horrible penalty to intelligence and charisma, but fundamentally, it needs to have better wisdom. It needs to have at least average wisdom, right? So that means our perception is going to be a +3 because we're going to give it proficiency but not expertise. We're going to make it proficient and expertise in stealth for our stone statue because that is what it does. It is programmed and designed to be a stealthy machine, right? I've given it damage vulnerability to bludgeoning because stone tends to crack if you hit it with something that's solid, right? And damage immunities to poison and psychic because that makes sense. But all the same conditions as before. Blind sight's the same range, but you can extend it if you want. And that means our passive perception will be a 13 now instead of a 12. We are going to keep our anti-magic susceptibility to a DC 15. This is the only time that it actually lines up with the monster's challenge rating, DC 15 for a saving throw, right? But again, like I said, it's based off the spell rather than the monster itself. And remember, if you cast a spell magic on animated armor or animated wooden statues or animated stone statues, and you succeed, you don't have to fight it anymore because it's no longer animated. It literally just shuts down, right? So that's a pretty strong effect. It's a very, very significant weakness. So let's take this and go copy down here. We'll get rid of the incapacitated word, and we add in our new word, which is no longer animated, but there, so it gets rid of the effect, which is in line with the spell. We don't need to change false appearance because false appearance is working exactly the way we want it to. Automatically succeed on dexterity stealth checks to hide, okay, while it remains motionless, as long as it doesn't move, okay. Now the idea behind this and the intent for me is in the first round, it should be able to not have to make a stealth check. But if it was to sneak follow somebody down a hallway moving, then it's going to be a different story. Do you know what I mean? That's my intent behind it. Okay, now, to hit, what do we need to hit? Well, how many attacks does a level 5, challenge rating 5 monster need to make? 2 attacks at least. Doing +7. So do we have a +7? We have 7 here. So we got a 4 from our strength, 3 from the proficiency bonus, that's 7. There we go, 7. Correct, right there. We're not going to give it a weapon because it's a stone statue. That would be odd. That would be out of place. So we're just going to give you the slam. And then it's doing 21 points of damage based off the bludgeoning damage I have here for it. It does 2 attacks, so it can hit twice. Is it doing enough damage though? Yes, it is. Okay. And that's it. You've got it. You have 3 stat blocks. Animated armor, high level monster. Animated wooden statue, low level monster. And then your animated stone statue, which is a sort of a I wouldn't say is it a mid-range monster? So I guess it's just above tier 1. It's like tier 2. It's a tier 2 monster. Whereas I would say tier 3 for the animated armor. And there you go. There it is. That's it. Easy peasies. It's not easy peasies, people, because trust me, I spent a bit of time working on this. Animated armor, to design it so it works in animated statues, is a fucking pain. It really is. Because there's a whole lot of things that you have to think in terms of what's the expected armor class, how many hit points, how long do I want it to last, what sort of environment will it be in, and how do I want it to work. And it has to lean really heavily on being stealthy in some way by not moving, and we need to try to get it surprise. We need to be able to surprise the players with it. And it's such a trope that things like the statues come to life in fantasy games. Like it's hard to trick the players. It really is. I'm really interested to see how this all works out when I get to test it, because I only just written it up today. I will put all of this up onto Patreon at the end of the week. The stat blocks are done. I think what I will do is I will separate each stat block, which will be a pain in the ass because it'll take me more time. It'll just make it easier for you to find them. So animated armor stat block will be separated from the animated wooden statue, separated from the animated stone statue, just so that they're not in one document at this present time. I think that's probably the smartest thing for me to do. Okay, which I know sounds really weird and time consuming, but yeah, that's where my head is at. Okay. Let's go back over to chat, see what people have to say, and then we'll truck off. Okay. How about so we got that option. I would think someone would could know. Yes. Okay. We've already covered that. Yeah, they took all the traits out of the animated armor for 2025. Absolutely everything. It's basically a basic creature. It might as well have bite claw. It might as well. It is a terrible stat block. But let's be fair. 2014 stat block wasn't very good either. It didn't work the way it needed to. So I forgive them for making a bigger mess from what was already a mess. Okay? Besides, it gives the opportunity for every single publisher out there to create their own stuff that you can use. Which is funny. Okay, do you think the animated armor stat block for Dungeons & Dragons 5e and 2025 needs fixing? Yes, 42%. Undecided, 42%. Interesting. No, 7%. Just watching, 7% out of 14 votes. Well, that's interesting. I'm curious how people think these come to these conclusions. But ultimately, the thing is, I've shown you how to remake a monster stat block for 2014 and for 2025. So if you wanted to do that, you can. I've shown you how to do that for this monster. Okay? It's not as hard as you might think. All right? There's a reason why I do these live streams, so that you make your own stuff. And at some point when I get around to it and I've done enough monsters, I'll put these all into one document and make them available somewhere. Probably Drive-Thru RPG. But anyway, for now, all the drafts are going up onto Patreon, okay? So I want to say a huge thank you to everybody for showing up today. I really do appreciate it. We're going to rock on out of here. Well, we're going to use this. Haven't used you for a while. So huge thank you for everybody who's been watching and listening. Thanks for everybody who took part in the poll. I really do appreciate it. It's good to have feedback. I want to thank all of my patrons on Patreon who support me so I can keep doing this. Otherwise, I'd wind up just going and working in my garden, frankly. That's probably what would wind up happening. And occasionally making some stuff at home for my own home group, and that's it. But I'm doing this because, yeah, I can still do this. Hopefully it'll continue. I want to thank everybody in chat. So Negative Space, Dirt. I want to thank Carlos, Fred Huber, Turbo Wolf, Joshua, and Joa. Is it Jonah? I think Jonah. Something like that. Anyway, so wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and friends. Be nice to your neighbours, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.